Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Members of council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. We'll move on to the approval of the council minutes. Looking for a mover and seconder for the special closed meeting held May 28th. Moved by Councillor Berbicki and Councillor Hammond. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Carried. And then looking for the same thing, mover and seconder to accept the council meeting minutes held May 14th and May 28th. Councillor Hammond and Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? And carried. Is there any business arising out of any of those minutes? I see none, so we'll move on to reports of staff and delegation. First one is Mr. Charlie Wright is here with the Communities in Bloom Committee, presentation of best blooming street signs, an update on the 2018 National Communities in Bloom Judges Tour. Mr. Wright?
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor Patterson, Deputy Mayor McDonald, and Council. We have the slide. Yeah, the slide shows, I just put this up that shows the number of towns and municipalities throughout Canada that are committed to the Communities in Bloom competition this year. We're in the upper right-hand corner, and we're being evaluated, as I say, once again at the national level in the 10 to 30,000 category, and our competition has two other municipalities, Gander Falls, Windsor, and Newfoundland, Labrador, and Orangeville, Ontario. Next slide. We'll be judged by a couple of judges. One is Susan Elliott Ellis, who used to be the manager of economic development and recreation tourism for the municipality of Pembroke, and led the CIB committee at Pembroke to the International Competition Award in 2013. And then the next judge is Tina Liu from Ottawa, who's manager of the floral program of the National Capital Commission. And last year when I went to the National Symposium, she was one of the people who gave the tour guides of the floral displays of the NCC. So they're both very well qualified and looking to evaluate Leamington. Next slide. The last slide has to do with our reception at the Marina, which we have all invited you to attend. Last year's reception was extremely successful and proved invaluable in the judges' scoring. We just missed out by 0.2% last year, and so we're looking at trying to get it this year. As our guest speaker this year, we have Kate Derbyshire of LDSS's Eco Club, who will talk about the importance of protecting wetlands and rejuvenation, and using Sturgeon Creek as an example of that, what they've done. She's going to be graduating from LDS this year from the Eco Club, and going on to Fleming College in September to pursue a diploma in fish and wildlife technology. The reception is a unique opportunity for the judges to meet the elected members of council. Since this committee isn't a council member, this is extremely important if we or Leamington are to have any chance of success at all at the national level. Finally, I'd like to present to the municipality the Best Blooming Street Award for 2017. Catherine, you want to get 2017, and that's Robson Road. Both, it's kind of a unique street because it has the front and back yards. The front yards are a lot along the waterfront. We took a boat cruise along the waterfront and looked at that. But they also have a number of the residences have done a number of different interesting things along Robson Road. So it's a real combination of a road. It's like a dual function, so we thought we'd present that to Robson Road as a 2017. And I'd like to present that to you, Mayor Patterson, if that's okay with you. Yep. We have a picture. Yep. And so it's one of the things that bringing pride into the community, and we have the door knockers and the pay it forward signs and stuff again this year. Well, if you want to.
Are you ready?
I didn't know if there's any questions or anything, or... Yeah, well, we're looking forward to seeing you on the 16th. It's in between council sessions, so...
Just one question, Your Worship. Yep. Just one question.
Councillor Hammond?
Thank you. Charlie, what can we do to get 0.2%?
Well, it starts at the reception, and you're with the little go-kart, that was good too, they liked that. And I think it's just the positive nature. I think last year, everything worked really well, and we're trying to duplicate that again, and hopefully we can push it over the top and bring home the hardware.
We can do that again if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations to the residents on Robson Road. No worries. The next report is one regarding the appointment of drainage commissioners. Mr. Sharon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Brandon, when you get the agenda back, can you just pull up the map associated with this report? As council is aware, we have a number of pumped drainage schemes in the municipality, and the map will just provide a reference as to where those drainage schemes are located. Annually, council appoints commissioners and pumpers of these schemes. Your commissioners essentially help both with the pumping, but with the management of the mechanical infrastructure and the pump houses, and they purchase fuel and do things basically to keep that pumping and that pumping scheme working. And then our pumpers are primarily paid on an hourly basis to actually provide the physical labor to run the pumps. So this particular report, annually, we bring this report to council. It's very similar to the report council receives every year. We recommend the appointment of the various commissioners and pumpers as outlined in the report. And then we also provide the minutes of the meeting within this report of all the meetings of the pump schemes for council's information. And so the recommendation before council tonight is that council receive the minutes as provided, and that council appoints the commissioners and pumpers as provided in the report.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Verbeke.
We're the mayor. I think it comes up every year. I'd like to know what the CAO's middle initial is, and maybe we can put it in there, because I see he works the West March drain all the time too, so I just want to make sure he's not the same guy.
I can assure you that it is not the same person. It was as startling to me when I started working here as it may be to others that I was signing a check essentially to the person with the same name as me, but it is not me.
Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Your Worship. Rob, I went through the minutes of some of the meetings that were held with the drainage supervisors, and I noted in one that there was, maybe you can take this question to Luann, she will have the answer. It was raised that the manhole that they use for extractions, it was noted that it's dangerous. I'm on page 43 of the report. And they talk about, the construction of those manholes, and the flaps that it takes to get at those. Do you know, Rob, or should we wait for Luann to get an answer with respect to when they clean those manholes? Is there anyone there with them to make sure that there isn't a problem? Or are they done without anybody else around, I guess?
See, through Your Worship, that particular part of the minutes that was related to manholes specific to the West Marsh drainage scheme.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I did have discussions with both the drainage superintendent and the manager of engineering regarding confined spaces and the requirements. We've built some additional infrastructure in the pump stations. That specific manhole, I'll talk to them insofar as exactly which one he was referring to there and what is the plan. But I too read these minutes. I read everything that comes through my department to council, and we have these discussions all the time. Right. And I know they've been actively working towards, because these pump stations in these buildings some of them been there for a very long time. And so we've been upgrading that infrastructure to ensure that there's the necessary life safety devices. Yeah, but I'll make a note, Councillor, and we'll get back to you on that specifically.
Mr. Sharon, probably an unfair question for you, but in the past, however many times this has come to us for approval, there's always been that discussion about WMIS training and whether the drainage guys have actually completed it. So I know there's resistance, I understand it, but to your knowledge, or can you find out at some point in time, have they all completed that? Because I assume it affects the municipality if something untoward were to happen.
Yes, Your Worship. I'll verify that all have actually done it. I know there were a few holdouts, but our position has been that it is mandatory that they undergo our health and safety program. But again, I'll make note of that as well and get a response.
Okay, thank you. Council. So we do have a motion on the floor. Further discussion? All in favor? And carried. 10.3, are we doing? It's the Beveline Village plan of subdivision. That one is off. Okay.
There are two reports, the Beveline Plan of Subdivision, as well as a addendum report, I believe it was, with respect to the servicing agreement. Both of those issues are going to not be dealt with tonight, as there was a technical issue that came up with respect to the servicing agreement. And to proceed on the servicing agreement, to proceed on the subdivision agreement without the servicing agreement does not make sense at this time. So both of those things will be coming back to council. I note that the proponent is here this evening. I don't know if he wanted to make any comments or if he's satisfied with just pulling the report. So those two reports will not be brought this evening. However, there is a report that Mr. Sharon is bringing that deals with the Bevel-Peely sewer that also brings into account the Beveline villages. So I would suggest that maybe we go to that report now.
Okay, so 10.3 is on again, off again.
Yep.
10.11, off again as well. The addendum?
Yes.
Okay. That was the addendum. So, all right. So then we will go to 10.4. Is that the one, Mr. Sharon? No? 10.5.
10.5.
Sorry.
Yes.
'71 to '75. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've asked that we start at this map because I think insofar as this particular report, this is where we should begin the story. So if council can see, and again, it's not coming up as clearly as I had hoped, but we have outlined for council in this particular map the boundaries of the sanitary service, the defined servicing area for the purposes of the 2012 environmental assessment to service the areas of Beveline and Peely Drive. While the municipality has been considering how to service, had been considering how to service this area for a number of years, it was primarily interaction and correspondence and communication with the MOECC in 2009 that really drove the municipality to start taking some active steps to determine how are we going to service these already built up shoreline areas. And so in a period from approximately 2009 to 2012, the municipality had built a strategy to have a series of 2 local improvements completed. The first being the Beveline local sanitary sewer local improvement, and that area is highlighted in yellow on the map that council's looking at. And the second was going to be the Peely Drive sanitary servicing area that is highlighted in green, defined in green in that map. In 2012, council decided to, rather than take those as 2 independent local improvement initiatives, to combine them under one environmental assessment and to proceed in that fashion. Essentially, the problem statement being We have a built-up area along the shoreline. It's contributing sanitary sewage to the lake. What are the possible alternatives to service this built-up area? That was, again, in approximately 2012. In 2015, the municipality completed the environmental assessment and applied to the Ontario Municipal Board for approval to proceed as a local improvement. During that time, we also received funding from both levels of government to help fund this particular project, somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 million. $2 million from the provincial government and $2 million from the federal government to help pay for this particular initiative. So that, again, is specific. That is the story that basically deals with how we intended to service the lands identified in this area. So we developed a problem statement. Those were the defined areas, and we had built a solution to service them. Around the same time when we were putting out the tender and determining what the final design of the sewer was going to look like, there was also additional interest from 2 subdivisions, vacant lands, very different servicing issues close to their outlet on Seacliff Drive. We needed to start putting our minds to, well, what would be the ultimate sanitary servicing solution for those 2 parcels, those vacant lands that were going to be a future subdivision development. Our original plan had and Brianna, maybe we'll switch to the second map in there because this helps to describe some of this. Again, the colors aren't coming through great. So we can see we have identified Bevel Line Villages, it's sort of in the orange there, and Gulfwood Lakes subdivisions. Those 2 subdivisions are approximately 400 meters and 800 meters from their outlet on Seacliff Drive. Our original plan, and we can see the Bevel Line, Peely Drive sanitary sewer coming up in that dotted area. So our original plan was to basically have 2 force mains, one that would service Gulfwood Lakes and Bevel Line Villages. Now it would come through Gulfwood Lakes, up through Bevel Line Villages, and then in the right-of-way to the manhole that's identified as manhole MH1-J. And we would essentially have 2 force mains. That dotted line would have continued straight up to that particular manhole. That would service Peely Bevel sanitary sewer. The second force main would service these Bevel Line Village and Gulfwood Lakes. So in looking at the design, we'd actually tendered that way, but we made a change to the design because we felt that it was insufficient or ineffective use of infrastructure to have 2 force mains running through the same right-of-way. It also provided a challenge where when a force main is running by some properties, there was 3 properties that weren't going to be picked up in that area because, again, it was a force main. And so the decision was made to change the design at that shared manhole, it's identified shared manhole MH1-N, that the sewer would then become a gravity sewer from manhole MH1-J, as indicated on the map, and it's highlighted in green. That would now become a new shared gravity sewer. The 2 subdivisions essentially paid the oversizing cost, basically equal to what the cost of running the single force main would have been, and they contributed to that project, to that, essentially that green section that council sees before them. Frankly, it was a small technical change to the top end of this particular sewer. And, you know, we had the cost sharing arrangement in place. Though when the Bevel Line Villages plan of subdivision came forward, I realized that there was questions of council basically saying, well, hang on a second, if these subdivisions are using the same sewer as the Bevel Peely residents, you know, why aren't they contributing sort of in the same fashion that they're contributing, meaning the Bevel Line residents and the Peely Drive residents? The answer is quite simple. They're 2 very different independent projects. One was developed with a very specific problem statement of cleaning up an already developed residential shoreline area and trying to get that sanitary sewage out of there. The sanitary sewage considerations for Bevel Line and Gulfwood Lakes. This is servicing, you know, new lands that are very close to their existing outlet. These lands are separated by approximately 2 kilometers. So they're from the pump station on Road B, up to the outlet on Peter Street. It's about 2 kilometers, two very different servicing areas. About all they have in common is that they share a small piece of communal sewer at the top end. It's technically the bottom end, but it's difficult to always look at the highest point as the bottom end of your sewer. But in this case, that's what we're dealing with. And so a lot of the questions, and concerns around this issue would be, well, how do we explain this to residents, and that it feels like they're paying a lot more, than these other subdivisions up at the top. And although, we can very easily, defend it on the technical merits, the process, insofar as who was included in the local improvement project and who was not, we recognize that the optics around that may not be great. Our opinion to council is that council would be fully justified leaving the costs as they sit in the Peely Drive Bevel Line Local Improvement Project. And, we suspect there would not be an issue getting those costs, acknowledged and approved if they were challenged at the OMB. However, in recognizing a couple things, one, that there are some optics issues there, recognizing that essentially from that shared manhole MH1-8 to the outlet on Peter Street, that it is more of a communal sewer. So you have the Peely Bevel area, both subdivisions and potentially some lots using that particular part of the sewer. And also recognizing that council has been looking for ways of reducing the cost for the Peely Drive Bevel Line residents, because the costs are substantial on those homeowners. That council would also be fully justified if they chose to do so, assume the cost, the net cost as outlined in the report. We're estimating around $198,000 for the cost of the sewer from the shared manhole to the outlet on Peter Street. The council would be justified assuming those costs, considering it a communal sewer, and funding it out of their infrastructure reserve, which is dedicated towards sewer infrastructure in the municipality. Before I conclude, I think the final thing I'll comment is that council could also decide if council makes a decision on this tonight and decides to do either option 1 or option 2, council will always have the option at the end of this project to take a look at the total costs that are being assessed to residents and determine, if that's fair in their opinion, or if council wants to do anything over and above what's being recommended tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharon. Questions? Councillor Hammond?
Your worship, thank you. And Rob, thank you for the report. You and I have had a number of talks on this. And I think in fairness to not only the residents on Peely Drive and Bevel Line, in light of the fact that what we're looking at assessing the owners of the go-kart track and the mini golf, what they're going to have to contribute, I think it's only fitting that we, and it isn't much of a savings to the homeowners, the residents, but it is $450. And I think that the fact that these two new subdivisions, Golf Woods and the other one are coming into there, I think we should assume those costs. That's my feeling. And I think that's being fair to the people that are already contributing, who are already having difficulties with the amount that they're assessed now. So having said that, I will move that we go with option number 2.
So I have a motion on the floor. Second by Councillor Verbeke. Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Worship. And Rob, yes, thanks for explaining it to us. You did a really good job. It wasn't easy for me to figure out this entire way along here, and you've done a really good job. I do understand it now better. I'm trying to understand it as this being new development. Think of it that way instead of the existing down the road. And so you've done a really good job to explain that. And I know we wanted to have more help for the residents down the road. We really do. We're always looking for that. And I appreciate that they've found something. It's maybe not the gigantic jackpot you're hoping for, but it is something. And staff did say they were going to do that for us back a year ago or so, or last fall when we were here. So I agree with Councillor Hammond as well, that option B is the one that I'm more comfortable with supporting tonight.
Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Just a question to Rob. and like, I guess wishful thinking, Christmas comes early, but is there any other efficiencies that may be derived out of this project yet that would be able to assist those individuals with the end cost of this? I know we don't have the final project costs before us at this particular point in time, so what they're anticipating is out there. I just wondered, do you anticipate any future? I know that's sort of a loaded question, but
Your Worship, I'll do my best to answer that question. The cost of the project, we're working on that. We're through 3 phases. We're working on our final phase now. The first 3 phases went well. This final phase is a little slow, though we're not raising the red flags yet. We still feel like we're going to be on the budget that was provided to council based on the tender documents. Again, we do continue to do a number of things. We have some strategies because when we do finish the project and we're able to tally the final cost, we'll have some things, for council's consideration that council could potentially do. I mean, council doesn't necessarily need any specific justification. I mean, council has a lot to weigh, a lot of things to consider, and a lot of things to weigh in making these types of public policy decisions, insofar as how much does the general taxpayer pay to help pay for infrastructure that's servicing, specific identified properties. But that being said, we do plan on identifying some areas where, if funding can be brought in, that there could be justification attached to that. And we're continuing to keep an eye on, if there's any specific funding programs that could be used for this project. Recognize when funds get sent to certain projects, they can't be used for other projects.
yeah, I thank you for that, and I guess we could go on for some hopeful or wishing funding somewhere along the line. Thank you, Rob.
Councillor Rubicki?
The Mayor, thanks. I just want to make sure that, well, I'm sure we have the almost 200,000 in reserve. Does that really hurt our reserve fund? Is there still a little bit left in there for the rainy day?
Your Worship, after this year, we anticipated the balance of that infrastructure reserve being $3.7 million. Again, $3.7 million is a lot of money, but I've mentioned to council before that, that is the infrastructure reserve that we use for all of our sanitary and storm sewer projects, and that particular piece of infrastructure has the least amount of funding allocated for life cycle renewal purposes. So it is, the number one least funded piece of infrastructure we have in this municipality is sewers. And Leamington's not alone. This is a challenge that a lot of municipalities face. But it'll be $3.7 million at the end of the year, Councillor.
Yeah, it won't go very far. It won't go far, no. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll agree with the recommendation from Councillor Hammond as well. I think there's a portion of that sewer that is for the greater good. It won't be junk going into the lake, and that's better for all of us. So the reasoning there is fine with me. Now, Rob, and I guess I want you to give me that keep it simple, silly way of thinking, see if I'm right on this. So these subdivisions, these folks are already paying in their lot purchase. They're technically already paying for the sewer that the developer will put in there. Is that correct? So they're already buying into something similar to what the residents, in theory, to what the residents on Bevel and Peely are, and that has a fairly substantial cost with it too. And then the amount where they pay into the whatever you call that connection. That makes sense. They've got their costs already involved in a brand new sewer, and then that connection is just something that they need to do in order to be part of the system. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, through your worship. That's correct, Deputy Mayor. In its simplest form, you can think when a subdivision developer develops the subdivision and ultimately sells a serviced lot to a home builder, that all of these costs would have been paid for, but included in the cost of that lot. So both the cost, of this particular segment of sewer to get to the outlet of Peter Street, in addition to all the sewers that have to be built within the subdivision, those that will ultimately be assumed by the municipality, as well as, the private connections that are on those sewers.
Okay, further comments that have been already made. I know that council and administration promised from the beginning, when we saw the cost of this whole project going up, we would do our best and continue to do our best to find extra funding or ways in saving and trying to reduce cost as best as possible. This is one step, small step, but a step just the same. And I know you're working hard on that, Rob, and I know that when we meet with ministers, we're still asking. I'm happy to see this, and it sounds like council will support the motion, which I think is great. So it is on the floor. Further discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. We'll move on to 10.4, which is a report regarding municipal-wide janitorial contract. Mr. Simons.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm here tonight to recommend that Council authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into an agreement with M&S Janitorial Services. This is to perform janitorial services at various locations throughout the municipality for the amount of $220,140 plus HST, which is the total cost of services from July 1st, 2018 through to June 30th, 2020. Prior to 2016, each respective building managed the janitorial services independently. Along with the introduction of the facility supervisor, there was a call to investigate where savings can be achieved by merging some of these types of contracts. In 2016, the municipality received 4 tenders and realized an annual savings of approximately $11,000 compared to services that were charged from 2015. Administration posted this tender on Tuesday, May the 15th, with the tender closing on May the 30th. There were 9 registered plan takers and 3 submissions were received. The tender forms identified pricing to be submitted for the following time periods: from July 1st of this year to December 30th, 2018, from January 1st, 2019 to December 30th, 2019, and January 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2020. A summary of the submissions are outlined in the report, along with the annual breakdown per department of the recommended contractor's pricing. Following a review of the submissions, M&S Janitorial is confirmed to be the lowest bidder and met the required minimum specifications. It also must be noted that M&S currently performs these services and has maintained a good working relationship with the municipality throughout its current agreement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor moving, supported by Councillor Verbicki. Discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Excuse me. Next report is one regarding the Windsor-Essex Provincial Offences Act. Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. In 1998, legislation transferred the responsibilities of the Provincial Offences Act court systems to municipalities. Under the transfer, the City of Windsor was designated as the service delivery agent by Windsor-Essex by the Province of Ontario. An intermunicipal service agreement between the City of Windsor and the 9 municipalities that constitute Windsor-Essex court services were also required. The current agreement with the City of Windsor expires in December of 2021. As per Section 2.5 of this agreement, the committee shall submit a report outlining the committee's activities to the parties' councils at a minimum of once a year. This report ensures compliance with the agreement. So the POA program is responsible for the collection and enforcement of ticketable offenses pursuant to Parts 1 and 3 of the Provincial Offences Act. Such violations in regard to the Highway Traffic Act, Liquor Control Licensing Act, fines issued under the various statutes, etc. The POA program excludes Part 2 offenses, which are parking offenses handled by each municipality. New legislation introduced in 2017 transfers the responsibility of some criminal prosecutions under Part 3 of the Act to municipalities. Based on discussions with the City of Windsor, it is expected that this additional workload will be handled through existing staffing and no incremental costs. So the 2017 annual report to the Windsor Essex POA program is included as an addition to tonight's council agenda. 2017 net revenues totaled approximately $1.3 million and were allocated to partnering municipalities based on weighted assessment, which for Leamington decreased by 0.4%. The municipality of Leamington was allocated approximately $77,000 in revenues for 2017. This is less than what was anticipated in the 2017 budget by approximately $28,000. This revenue stream fluctuates on several factors, including charging volumes, charging values, collections, and weighted assessment. Given declining revenues, a more conservative estimate will be included in the 2019 budget. So it is recommended to Council that the Windsor Essex Provincial Offences Act Program 2017 annual report be received.
Thank you very much. Questions? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Next item is a report regarding the Windsor Essex Provincial Offences. No, I just did that one. I'm sorry. Forgot to cross that one out. Regarding the Main Street Revitalization Initiative. Laura.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Earlier this year, the province announced $26 million in Main Street Revitalization Initiative designed to support capital improvements for Main Street areas. The funding formula allocates $54,000 to Leamington's uptown area. So the report before Council this evening includes the eligible types of projects that this funding may be used for. These funds must be spent by March 30th, 2020, and similar to gas tax, there are annual reporting requirements to AMO on project spending details. The funds will be held in a separate reserve fund. The purpose of the report tonight to Council is that this program requires a bylaw authorizing the funding agreement with AMO, as well as a project approved by this Council. As the Mill Street Reconstruction Project fits the intention of this funding program, and this project is anticipated to have additional funding requirements, administration recommends allocating the Main Street Revitalization Initiative to the Mill Street Reconstruction Project for 2018. So therefore, it is recommended that the Mill Street Reconstruction project be approved as the project to receive the Main Street Revitalization Initiative funding. Bylaw 38-18 to enter into a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario on the Main Street Revitalization Grant Initiative Program be considered, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to digitally sign the Main Street Revitalization Initiative municipal funding agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Council's wishes? Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. 10.8, report regarding the committee to review compensation for the Leamington Municipal Council. Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. On April 23rd of this year, Council passed the motion to establish a committee to review compensation levels for this Council, Leamington Police Services Board, the Committee of Adjustment, and Union Water's Joint Board of Management. This 5-person volunteer committee was to be comprised of 2 residents of the community and 1 representative from the manufacturing, agricultural, and retail sectors. The mandate of this committee was to produce an independent report with recommendations for the level of total compensation for each member of council and these committees for the term following the 2018 municipal election, and to review other boards and committees of the municipality to determine if remuneration is warranted. It was also anticipated that the committee would review the impact of the removal of the 1/3 tax exemption for municipally elected officials that is expected to occur in 2019. Based on Council's direction, administration sought applicants for the committee by way of advertisements published on the municipal website, in the local newspaper, and via social media. Only 1 application was received. Despite extending the timeline and additional advertising, no additional applicants were received. So as an alternative, administration requested quotes from 3 consultants to perform the work by July 2018. The two estimates received were from Marianne Love and Levac Management Consulting. So given all of this, there are currently 3 options for council to consider. Firstly, continue to advertise in hopes of attracting new volunteers to form a committee as previously approved. The second option is to forego the review and allow remunerations to remain the same as they are today and being reviewed in the spring of 2022 for the next term of council. And option 3 would be to have the compensation review completed by Marianne Love. Administration is recommending retaining Marianne Love to conduct the review of compensation for council and the previously mentioned committees for the 2018 to 2022 term. As Mrs. Love has conducted the salary reviews for the municipality before, she has been retained by the town of Amherstburg to review compensation for their elected officials and would be able to leverage that relevant information in Leamington's review. And all work that Ms. Love has previously performed has been acceptable. There are no funds specifically budgeted for this review. However, there will be projects that will be underspent and deferred in 2018 to sufficiently cover this project. So therefore, it's recommended that council authorize retaining Ms. Marianne Love to conduct the review of compensation for council, for this municipal council, the Committee of Adjustment, Leamington Police Services Board, and the Union Water Joint Board of Management for 2018 to 2022 at a cost of $5,000 plus HST.
Thank you very much. Never a comfortable subject for council to address when you're talking about their own pay. But we are looking at the next council and what we feel they should be remunerated. It's disappointing that we couldn't get enough people to sign up for the review, but you know, it is what it is. What are the downsides for council members, whoever they may be, if we simply go with the status quo? I mean, that the wages have been increased by 2% like everybody else, based on our current pay scales. What are the downsides leading into 2019 if we just remain as is? And I think you touched on it, and that's that 1/3 tax-free portion is probably the biggest thing that's going to be affecting members of council across Ontario.
Yes, Mayor Patterson, that's correct. Probably that is the biggest impact or change to council's remuneration. As well, I think it's important to take a look at the structure in which we pay in some of the committees and those other committees that are not compensated for. So it was the full gamut that we were looking at reviewing for 2018 through 2022. But certainly the 1/3 tax exemption, depending on how that recommendation would come forward, it will significantly impact future council members.
Okay. Councilor Rubicki?
We're the mayor, I really, I'm stuck here because I don't feel like spending $5,000, but I can't believe that even the naysayers wouldn't come out and be part of this committee. I mean, 5 people. And did we get one at least? I thought we had one person. Yeah. So, okay. And is it too late I know it's not part of the recommendation, is it too late to re-advertise it one more week, or is it just out of question?
Mr. Neufeld?
Well, I'm not sure that re-advertising is going to make the difference. I suppose what we could do is to reach out to some people within the community that we think would have an interest in sitting on a committee like this, but the perception of that is then that you're picking and choosing the people that you want to come in and make this decision. Obviously, we're in council's hands here, but we could try reposting the ad, but I'm not sure, given that we've posted it twice and extended the time frame and all we got was the one person.
Councilor Jacobs?
Well, thank you, Worship. With the one individual that has applied, what is the possibility that we could do that in-house to administrative people? Like, I'm sure they could check with other municipalities to see what their remunerations are and sort of come in line or whatever. Just, I guess, want to get away from spending the 5,000. But if that one individual would come and could sit with them to monitor it, or maybe get another one in as well. Just a suggestion, or I guess just asking.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At first, when I read this, I thought, well, we turned down the salary review, we shouldn't be doing this either. But then that, looking at changing the tax structure, I think we need to do that. It needs to be done going forward for whoever's going to be on council. We already know we don't get paid a ton of money, but you also don't want to be in the hole for it, because if you're in the hole for it, no one's going to sit up here. And I think you still have to make the positions attractive enough that people want to do it, not for the money, but for the fact that they want to do it for the betterment of the municipality. But if you're going to be in the hole, there's no, not even the good people are going to sign up. So to my thinking, we should go this route to at least get a professional opinion. That just, a project like this, to my way of thinking, just adds more onto finance, which is already one of our strapped departments. So my way of thinking would be, go for it. It needs to be done. It won't need to be done again in 5 years, as long as you have that base formula in there to account for the 1/3 tax coming off.
Through the mayor, I'll move the recommendations that we do hire an outside source, so it doesn't seem like we're picking people like neighboring communities by the river.
All right, so motion on the floor, second by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? Carried. Final report is one regarding accessible taxi cab survey. Oh, and then, okay. Do I do that one first, though? No? So who's doing, oh, all right.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So the report here is regarding a survey that was done earlier this year regarding accessible taxi cabs. Just as some background information, all municipalities in Ontario must comply with the provisions of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, as well as all the regulations. The Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation includes provisions relating to the duties of municipalities regarding accessible taxi cabs. The municipality currently meets the provisions outlined in Section 80 of the regulation, and that prohibits taxi cabs from charging additional fees for persons with disabilities. And we meet that by including provisions in the taxi cab licensing bylaw, which require that, which prohibits charging a higher fare or fee for persons with disabilities, or for carrying or transporting a passenger with mobility aids, as well as providing information in an accessible format upon request. Any taxi cab driver found in contravention of any of these requirements are subject to a $100 set fine and or suspension or revocation of their license. In order to comply with Section 79 of the regulation, which directs that the municipality consult with its Municipal Accessible Advisory Committee, the public and persons with disabilities, to determine the proportion of on-demand accessible taxi cabs desired in the community. We developed a survey, and the survey was posted on the website and advertised through social media, as well as copied to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the South Essex Community Council, and licensed taxi cab companies in the municipality. While we did have some interest in looking at the survey, only 8 submissions were received. Only 50% of those who responded currently use taxi cab service in Leamington, and the frequency ranged from a few times per year to once per week. The results of the survey were presented to the Accessibility Advisory Committee on February 7th as well as May 9th. And the committee recommended no action at this time. However, it was recommended that the survey be reissued again in 2 years' time. So administration has not received enough response through this survey to validate the need for an accessible taxi cab incentive program at this time. Nevertheless, it's important to note that 75% of the survey respondents identified a concern that the taxi cab driver is not trained to help with the accessibility needs of passengers. Now, there's no legal requirement that a taxi cab driver assist passengers into the vehicle or store their mobility aids for them. However, it's important to ensure that all passengers are provided a safe and comfortable ride. It's therefore recommended that administration investigate training programs relating to accessibility such as an online training program offered through the Taxicab, Limousine, and Paratransit Association. This training could be offered to other organizations such as Leamington Transit or South Essex Community Council. And there's no financial impact on the municipality at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Brianna. It's nice to hear from you. Brianna, I wasn't really expecting this. I know we had a lot of discussion last year regarding taxi cabs, especially around the business license. I gave this report a good read a couple times there last night, and I'm not in support of it. And it's based on the data that's provided. There's really good data in this report. And I put a lot of stock into what our accessibility committee has to say as well. That's first and foremost for me. And if they are recommending no action at this time, then I'm going to take their lead on that. I like how they commented that it should be reissued 2 years from now. Also, just the low turnout numbers that we got. It seems like we'll be pleased in a small percentage, basically, at that point, based on the data that's in this report. So I hate to, first one out for you that I'm not in support of it, but that's my thoughts on this one at least. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Verbeke and then Councillor Hammond.
Through the Mayor, thanks. I don't know who to direct this to, but it's entailed with the, is there a final day for all business to become accessible? Other than now, if you're building or something, you have to remodel or something, I think you have to have the doors and the push button. But I mean, is it 2020, 2025? Has there ever been a date written in stone yet where, and if not, I thank you, but I have to, I will then agree with Councillor Wilkinson about the decision of this. So I just didn't know about the day yet. I don't think it's written.
Okay. Councillor Hammond?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Brianna. Brianna guides us through our accessibility meetings very well. It didn't appear in the report, but something you may be interested in is in the fact that there was a informal survey done of the cab companies, and there's no interest in purchasing accessible cabs. We talked to a number of them, and we even approached it with the idea of an incentive for them to buy an accessible cab. The difficulty was we couldn't put a dollar value to it. We even looked at reduced licensing fees to see what we could do legally, and it wouldn't, and then we would want to know whether the cabs were maintained. We had quite a bit of discussion on this over 2 or 3 different meetings. But the end result of all of this is not only did the study not do much for us, but there was no appetite from the cab companies to purchase accessible cabs at this point.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's too bad no one's interested because we do have a few people that are stuck. They're fine in the day when the bus is running, but if they have to go out later in the evening, there's no way for them to get back home, and that's the too bad part. A friend of ours, of the municipality, I'll say, Maeve Olmsted, who's a great lady, would certainly have need of something like this, and it's too bad that there aren't more people. It may come to be that there will be greater numbers at some point in time as our population ages and finds that they still want to have a fairly active life even though they have restrictions. But I understand monetarily it makes no sense. But I'm not clear on what you're saying, Councillor Wilkinson. You're saying don't bother investigating in the training program because that's the recommendation. Is that what you're saying? Because you said you weren't agreeing with what Brianna said. That's how I understood it.
No, the recommendation is to, it is therefore recommended administration investigate training programs related to the accessibility. And if the accessibility committee is saying no action is required, then I'm with the accessibility committee's opinion. So yes, I am against investigating based on what the accessibility committee is telling us.
Councillor Hammond?
Help me, Brianna, if I get off track here. But I think what the committee is looking at is not investigating further, asking the cab companies to purchase accessible cabs. I think, isn't that not what we're talking about here, Brianna? And I think that the committee would, yes, like to see the cab drivers be trained in some kind of accessibility, because keeping in mind, it's not just the folks who are in wheelchairs, there's all kinds of, accessibility needs that they need to address, whether it be hearing and a bunch of other things. So I think that that's why Brianna in the report is recommending that the drivers get some form of training. Am I on track, Brianna?
Through your worship, that's correct. I mean, that is what the Accessibility Advisory Committee had discussed. They had discussed a financial incentive program and decided at that point not to move forward with that. And the recommendation that's before you, that we be directed to investigate a training program, I believe that what we were discussing was again, we would have to investigate that, but we were looking more towards a free program that could be promoted to the taxi cab companies rather than the municipality paying to put that on.
So Councillor Hammond, yeah, I mean, you're on the accessibility committee, right? So you have a better feel for this than the rest of us. And I didn't see any costs here, so it didn't matter to me. I thought the recommendation was fine. But understanding what you're saying is that, like you've got vision impaired, hearing impaired, all sorts of things that affects people's ability to get around. So yeah, if the cab drivers are being educated on how to handle those kind of needs, then I think that's a great thing. Okay, so.
And thank you, Mayor. And that's the intent of the report.
Right, okay. Councillor Wilkinson?
Well, I'll correct myself then. If that is the intentions of the Accessibility Committee, then is to further explore training at no cost to the cab companies to help them basically service our handicapped community, then yes, I go along with that. Thank you.
Councillor Jacobs? Oh, all right. Seconded by Councillor.
I'll second it where the mayor seconded, and I'm sure if this is all Ontario, that somewhere, some town, some city already has a bylaw drafted that we can't, don't reinvent the wheel again, that we use part of that, their findings to draft something. So yeah, no.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion then? And motion carries. Thanks very much. We'll go to additional reports on our addendum 10.10 regarding site plan application, proposed residential and commercial development on the west side of County Road 33. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to at least set the stage for this this report because it's a little bit different than what you've seen. We're coming with a report, and as council knows, you received this report late this afternoon, which is not our goal. However, administration was really not ready to bring this report to council as administration is not in a position to support it. However, it's a very unique situation where the development as described would normally be processed under a subdivision agreement. But because the proponent is not going to be subdividing, he's going to maintain ownership as in the whole, it's being done under a site plan agreement. But conceptually, I mean, one of the things that we have heard from council is, we'd like to know ahead of time if there's going to be something different. We, as administration, we had committed to bringing any site plan agreement that may be controversial or different to council for consideration. That's what's happening here. For the most part, what administration is wanting to do is to bring this concept to council for its first reaction. We weren't really looking for approvals tonight. In fact, there are a number of reasons, as you know, in this report, why administration is not in that position to support this right now. However, the proponents are also here, and they may have a different perspective on whether or not council could or should approve this. So I wanted to set it up so that when Danielle and Madeline give their report here, you understand that administration initially is coming to you with a new concept, something for you to consider, because if you look at this concept and you say, There is no way that we're going to go down that path. We don't want to have put the proponents and administration in a position of doing a whole bunch of background work to try and satisfy the conditions, only to come to council and have council say, well, had we known that this was going to be this unusual concept, we wouldn't have gone down this path in the first place. So with that, I'll allow Madeline and Danielle to take through the report, and then I'm sure that the proponents have some comments that they want to make as well.
Fire away.
Thank you very much. Okay, so on May 8th, 2018, administration received an application for site plan control approval for the vacant lands located south of the intersection of Talbot Street East and County Road 33, also located just west of Anford Street. The property has approximately 596 meters of frontage along County Road 33 and is approximately 5.64 hectares, 13.94 acres in area. The subject lands are designated residential and eastern commercial district under the official plan. So the north part of the lands here are the commercial parts, and the south is the residential. The southern portion of the lands are zoned residential R3, and they are also in a holding zone, and the northern part is zoned commercial general C2 and also in a holding zone. The R3 zoning provides for standard residential uses, including one single unit detached dwelling per lot, one converted dwelling per lot, 2-unit dwelling, semi-detached, as well as multi-unit dwellings excluding apartment-style buildings. The lands to the immediate west of the property have been developed as a medium-density residential neighborhood zoned R2, comprising of a mix of single-detached, semi-detached, split-level, 2-story, and ranch-style homes. Sturgeon Creek crosses the subject property in an east-west direction, starting from the abutting municipally owned lands to the west. The property is bound to the north and east by County Road 33, and an existing commercial trucking operation is immediately to the south. I think is Nassif. The holding symbol that has been applied to the zoning subject property is to delay final development approval until such time as specific conditions are met. So this is outlined in our official plan. These conditions relate to the presence of official phasing and or proper servicing of all proposed types of development that may be proposed on the subject property. So in section 7.3 of the official plan, it states that those residentially zoned lands with no presence of a draft or finally approved plan of subdivision, the holding symbol is applied until such time as engineering studies indicate the presence of adequate level of services are approved by the municipality. So the proposal itself is kind of in 3 parts. So the first part I'll talk about is the residential development, which is located on the south portion of the site. The residential portion of the development proposes 14 multi-unit dwelling units, including, which is on the south side of what will be proposed as a public right-of-way. The units are accessed off of a private roadway. The portion of the residential area is approximately 5.7 hectares in area and will become its own legal parcel with approximately 59 meters of frontage along the new proposed right-of-way, which I will get to. Each of the multi-unit dwellings is proposed to be 3 stories in height and contains 6 3-bedroom units for a complete total of 84 units. Based on the area of the entire portion of the site, the proposed density of the development is 14.7 dwellings per gross hectare. But as you can see from the map, all the residential proposal is north of Sturgeon Creek, so we kind of did another density check on that. So in that smaller area, more accurate calculation based on that area alone would be 26.5 dwellings per gross hectare. This falls within the medium density residential. The site plan indicates that a total of 128 parking spots will be provided on site and are located either immediately in front of the residential dwellings or within 3 communal lots. The proposal also includes 45 bike parking spaces. Private outdoor garbage collection areas and a passenger vehicle loading area is also proposed in the residential portion of the site. So the second portion would be the commercial development. This is located north of the site. So the commercial development would be 241 square meters retail building. It will be accessed off of the proposed right-of-way, and it will also become its own legal property with approximately 0.33 hectares and 50 meters of frontage. The commercial retail space provides 17 standard parking spots and 1 barrier-free parking spot, and also includes bike parking, a private outdoor garbage collection area. The third and final, which I've mentioned before, would be a public right-of-way that's being proposed. The new public right-of-way being proposed is going to be between Anford Street and County Road 33. It's proposed that this new public right-of-way, I'll call it Street A, will become a collector road and owned and maintained by the municipality of Leamington, and it will connect directly to County Road 33. Next, I'll talk about is the servicing. So the subject property does not currently have any access to municipal sanitary or water services. However, a temporary private sanitary system has been proposed to be tied into the municipal sanitary system. This will accommodate all 84 residential units until municipal services can be provided via the proposed northeast trunk sewer expansion. The proposed servicing will require the property owner to construct a private collection system, including an on-site pumping station that outlets into the municipal sewer at an approved rate during specified times. Now, because this is a planning report and it's done under a Planning Act application, planning has done some preliminary comments, of course, to see if it meets the planning policies. So first would be the provincial policy statement. So the provincial policy statement is a provincial document that is issued under Section 3 of the Planning Act and provides clear policy direction for land use development across the province. Further review of the final layout of the proposed development as it relates to the creation of healthy community and the efficient use of existing infrastructure is required prior to administration being in a position to state the development is consistent with the PPS. And the PPS really concentrates on the development of healthy, sustainable, resilient communities and ensuring that proper infrastructure is supplied at the site. So at this time, we need a little bit more information to make sure that it does meet the provincial policy statements. The next would be the County of Essex Official Plan. So the County of Essex Official Plan is a document created under the Planning Act to guide planning decisions throughout the lower tier municipalities of the County of Essex. The proposed development is required to conform with the policies of the County Official Plan. So further review, just like the provincial policy statement, is required to ensure that the policies in the official plan are being met. And the official plan does concentrate on some of the same things as the provincial policy statement. In particular, it'll concentrate on affordability, housing options, so a different mix of units being provided, making sure that what the development is proposing is mixed use, it's compact, it's pedestrian oriented, and has access to transit. The next policy would be our municipal official plan. So the official plan guides land use development throughout the municipality, and the proposed development must be able to demonstrate that it conforms to our official plan policies. So there are a couple of different sections of our OP that this proposal would be required to meet, and I've pulled out a few of them. So section 2.2 would be under the general development policies, in particular site suitability. So in section 2.2b, the necessary services are available to adequately accommodate the proposed development. As I mentioned before, the subject lands are not accessed by municipal services. The water distribution system on the proposed residential parcel has been shown on the servicing drawings that were received by administration and are to the satisfaction of water services. And as mentioned before, a sanitary servicing concept has been developed in conjunction with engineering services. However, details of this concept and preliminary servicing report are currently still under review. Design and specifications relating to the required pump station must be submitted for review and approval by engineering services. The proposed on-site sanitary collection system piping must also be reviewed by our building services for compliance with the Ontario Building Code. The next would be in, again, section 2.2c, that no traffic hazards will be result because of additional traffic. So we reviewed this closely, and we noted that further consultation is required, in particular consultation between the applicant and the County of Essex, as it's going to connect to a county road, and as well, municipality will work with them closely to meet our requirements. So the proposed development incorporates, as I mentioned, a new public right-of-way, and it will connect between Anford Street and County Road 33. The details of the proposed roadway are currently under review by the County of Essex, and we have received notice of that today, and as well as our municipal engineers. I'm just going to grab some of my notes. So as I mentioned before, further consultation we think is also required. This is to determine the size of the right-of-way, the number and type of traffic lanes, and the type of active transportation facilities that may be required. Additionally, once the right-of-way has been established, the resulting residential and commercial sites can be finalized. So that means if the road width has to be expanded based on consultation with the County of Essex, the site plan may have to change. Additionally, detailed construction drawings depicting the location, type, and design for the street, including but not limited to streetlights, like I said, active transportation, private utilities such as gas, hydro, where mailboxes may need to be located as per Canada Post comments, and then as well the location of the commercial and residential roadway entrance. And then lastly, on this note, it's anticipated that the construction, acceptance, assumption, and conveyance of Street A will follow the process normally required for the development of a road within a plan of subdivision. The terms and provisions of the site plan agreement to ensure the construction of Street A and services to a municipal standard and the timely acceptance and conveyance of the land to the municipality will be specifically drafted and included within the standard site plan agreement, details of which have not been established at this time. Moving on, again, still in section 2.2, would be my last note, is that adequate measures will be taken to alleviate or prevent any adverse effects that the proposal may have upon adjacent and existing uses. At this time, Planning Services is working with the applicant and engineering services to determine which, if any, adverse effects may result from the proposed built form of the residential and commercial parcels, as well as any possible impacts, if any, of the on-site privatary sanitary system. The next section would be section 3.2.2, which is under our land use section for the residential requirements from the official plan. So clause F indicates that a high standard of design with complementary amenities, parks, trails, schools, roads, open spaces, etc., shall be provided as part of a full future residential development, unless it can be proven that the aforementioned exists within the proximity and may be easily utilized by the residents. The proposed dwellings are to be located facing the internal private roadway at the same setback of 9.27 meters. With only 3 meters proposed between each building, the dwellings may appear as one long, monotonous development from the street, offering no identity or sense of place to those residing in the neighborhood. Early preliminary renderings show that the residential component of the proposal incorporates multi-unit dwellings with a flat facade and 6 external entranceways, 4 of which are accessed by a set of stairs and are located in the middle of the facade. There are no specific external architectural features proposed to set the individual buildings apart from one another. However, the applicant has noted that the color of the facades may be varied. Landscaping has been proposed, however, it has not been indicated what type of landscaping. So the landscaping on the site plan has been proposed for either side of the parking areas that are out front of the buildings. And like I mentioned, we haven't learned which type of landscaping that will be. Additionally, there has been no street calming effects incorporated into the private roadway. The proposal includes 79.25% landscape open space. This includes the undeveloped lands that are south of Sturgeon Creek. With that being said, although there's a lot of open space, no specific amenity spaces or facilities have been identified on site. And I think it's important to note that the closest municipal park to service the proposed 84 units with playground or picnic facilities is Eastside Park. This is a 12-minute walk. Much of this route would not have sidewalk access through existing neighborhoods. And finally, to address this section in the official plan, creating a sense of place and ownership that accommodates a variety of renters, so families, seniors, individuals, couples, is an important component in developing safe and resilient neighborhoods that are beneficial to the Leamington community as a whole. As a result, Planning Services is not confident that the proposal meets this section of the official plan at this time, and further work may need to be done. So lastly, it's important that the zoning bylaw be met. The subject property is zoned residential holding zone R3 and commercial general holding zone C2, as mentioned before. At this time, Planning Services cannot provide confirmation that both of the proposed developments meet zoning setbacks until the proposed public right-of-way has been approved through consultation with municipal engineers and the County of Essex. However, I will note that standard parking requirements apply to this proposal. 126 standard parking spaces are required for the residential component, all of which are being supplied. 13 standard parking spaces and 1 barrier-free space is required for the commercial component, all of which are being provided. So in conclusion, Planning Services has determined that the proposed site plan deals with items that are traditionally outside of the scope of the Development Standards Manual and Standard Site Plan Agreement, and therefore we would like to present it to Council for consideration and approval. These items include the conveyance and construction of a future municipal right-of-way requiring coordination and consultation with the County of Essex, and the requirement of the municipality to enter into a secondary agreement to address the proposed sanitary servicing solution. The applicant has requested that the site plan be brought to council, as Peter has mentioned, for consideration and approval on the condition of all outstanding items being addressed, and the final details of the site plan agreement and servicing agreement be delegated to staff. At this time, administration is not in a position to provide a final recommendation for approval for the proposed residential and commercial development. Prior to recommendation and final site plan agreement being available, administration requires a site-specific design and plans as included but not limited to the items I'm about to list. So first would be traffic impact assessment, that it be completed and approved, sanitary servicing report and design, that it be completed and approved, stormwater management and report plans, final site plan drawing and planning analysis, construction drawings for proposed Collector Street A, preparation of the site-specific terms and provisions for the site plan agreement, and preparation of the site-specific terms and provisions for the servicing agreement. I just want to note that some of these items have been received, but we are currently working interior with administration to make sure that they are up to the standards that we require. I also want to make sure that I note that administration has not yet received any comments from external agencies. And the proposal may require clearance and permits from the following, but not limited to County of Essex, IRCA, MNRF, and the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. So we haven't received any feedback from there. So upon the submission, review, and approval of the items that I just mentioned, administration will be in a position to provide council with a final recommendation regarding the proposed development, as well as the site-specific provisions to be included in the site plan and servicing agreement. And then just sort of as a side note, as I mentioned before, there is a holding symbol placed on this property. The municipality is required to provide notice of the intention to pass an amending bylaw to remove the holding symbol from the zoning of the property. Notice can be satisfied by publishing a notice in the local newspaper or by giving personal notice to those property owners where the subject land is located. There are no minimum requirements for the number of days prior to the passing of the bylaw. There is no requirement for the minimum distance in which the notice, if delivered by hand, needs to be circulated. Only the applicant is in a position to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal, LPAT, if council refuses to pass a bylaw to remove the H symbol, or neglects to make a decision within the 120 days of receiving the application to do so. The applicant has not submitted an application to remove the holding symbol at this time. The holding symbol must be removed prior to the commencement of any construction. So I just want to go over sort of what we're kind of asking council to do today. So right now, administration recommends that council receive the site plan sketch prepared by Baird on May 5th, 2018 for the development of the 14 multi-unit residential dwellings, a commercial retail site, and the creation of a new municipal right-of-way. Also, it's recommended that council look to administration to prepare a final site plan agreement for council's consideration and approval, subject to the following: the review and approval of the following traffic impact assessment, sanitary servicing report and design, site plan drawing and planning analysis, and the proposed right-of-way full construction drawings, as well as clearance from the following agencies: County of Essex, IRCA, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, if necessary. And finally, that the site plan and servicing agreements and bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 890-09, as amended to remove the holding symbol from the zoning of the subject property, be presented to council together for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, first of all, and then council members, if there are any questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind council that I sent out a letter of support for this development under separate cover from Aaron Hamer of the Highline Mushroom Farm. So I just wanted to make sure I reminded you of that.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Interesting project for sure. I stopped on my way here tonight, sit in your driveway there, have a little look at potential, what it could be, and definitely an interesting project. Madeline, I caught one of your sentences there that really caught my ear here, and was regarding our own OP, which was we have an obligation to provide safety to our residents, and I know the one, of course, that comes particularly to mind is sidewalks, of course, getting people, kids to and from the development to wherever. Can you expand on some other safety features, though, that aren't part of this project that, bother you about it?
I think it's a good question, and it really falls under a lot of the direction that we get from the provincial policies that we have to kind of adhere to, and maybe not necessarily safety in the traditional sense, but it's more about creating strong, healthy communities, ones that will last for a long time and will be very successful. Some of the items that can be done to create that, so sidewalks are proposed, absolutely, that's great, but creating a little bit more sense of place. I know that likely these will be rental units, but also, it doesn't hurt to create more of a sense of ownership as well. And that can be through differentiating between some of the units. So when we do subdivisions, it can be proposed that units are set at different setbacks, kind of like, I guess, create more interest so people have a little bit more I guess, sense of place of where they are, that this is a neighborhood. It's not all the sort of same style. It's not all sort of monotonous. I think some people use, it's a little bit negative connotation, but a barrack style development. And we want something that's a little bit more interest, a little more visual interest, eyes on the street, making sure that people are using the open space for, sports, or if there's going to be amenity facilities proposed there, making sure that people are out there using that, just as any other neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. One follow-up question, or one more question as well. We have I think it's Sturgeon Creek that runs through this development. What would happen with Sturgeon Creek there? Is that going to be somehow roaded over? And what would our drainage superintendent think of this?
Thanks. So Sturgeon Creek is on the very bottom of our development, right? So it doesn't impact our development whatsoever. We're proposing a stormwater pond that's just north of the Sturgeon Creek. So everything would go to the stormwater management pond, then south to the Sturgeon Creek. So the Sturgeon Creek isn't a problem for us. And we meet the setbacks on our current development. And then as another point, just to Madeline's thing about a sense of place, the development doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility with regards to setbacks. So you have the county road setback, so that's a major obstacle to once you place that along the entire length of the property. So that determines everything on where these units go. So there's very minimal that we can do to change the layout in that regard.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not to be argumentative, but we have approved a development just like that, what you said, that looks barrack style, and that's on Talbot East, behind the binders and the O'Neill property. So we have been known to do that, and it's not terribly great looking, but it looks like it's working to me. I've driven by it and looked in, and it seems to be a very viable little spot. So anyway, I have a couple of questions. The traffic impact assessment, is that because of the effect onto County Road 33?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And then street calming. This doesn't look like a thoroughfare that people would be racing down. So what does street calming mean on a street that ends in a cul-de-sac, if you don't mind?
Yeah, well, it would be for those particular reasons. So when you have any sort of street that's a straightaway, we do always want to see some sort of street calming effects just to make sure that that doesn't happen. But this one here, it's not very long, but we just think that could be a nice addition, though we have no requirements for that. It's just something that we would generally like to see, but again, there's no requirements in our policies for that.
And how would they do that, street calming?
It could be similar to some bump outs that we've seen put on some other streets,
dear.
or it could be,
Sorry, I'm thinking Danforth, I just had a twitch.
but there are slight curves in the road and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And then, so the 12-minute walk to amenities, Sturgeon Meadows, Anford would probably be 10 minutes, right? Because they're just behind them. Okay, thank you. And then time frame for all of these requirements to be put in place. What kind of a time frame is the developer looking at?
Thank you, through your worship. Right now, so we are providing the developer with comments about what's expected from each of the reports that we have received. The turnaround time will really be dependent on the level of those comments from engineering, planning, the County of Essex, IRCA, etc. So this is where we start to work with the developer. They get our revisions, they submit them back to us. Once we have those final approved plans, again, we are just looking at them. So to provide you further detail about what's expected, we don't have that tonight. We would then implement, we have the approved plans, we implement those provisions into the site plan agreement. So it's really up to how fast can they address the concerns that are brought forward by the municipality, the various departments, and the commenting agencies. So
You
no
can't
standard.
ballpark it?
Pardon?
You can't ballpark it for me?
I couldn't. Perhaps Mr. Baird, based on some of the comments you received?
Thank you, and I was going to ask you that, Mr. Baird. What kind of time frame are you looking at?
Well, we don't have a lot of time to work with, to be honest, on this file, because we need to get these units built. I guess I should maybe kind of bring you back a little bit just to say like what we have done for this development, because you know we brought this development kind of forward back in January, back last year, and we wanted to get it in front of council just to get your thoughts on it at that point, right? So that we're not coming last minute and then having to, you know, go back and redesign all the reports and then redesign everything. But at this for this project, we couldn't bring this to council until we had done all of these reports. So just it kind of sounded like some of the from some of the comments that we hadn't done anything. We're just coming to you guys now. So like to date, we've done like a site plan, site servicing plan, grading and drainage plan, stormwater management report, lighting plans, photometrics, traffic impact assessments, servicing reports, acoustical studies, biological studies, Ministry of Natural Resources clearance, we do have that, by the way, flow monitoring analysis, planning justification report, electrical design, pump station design, and natural gas design. So we've done a lot of work, you know, behind the scenes. So it's not like we're just coming into this like we haven't done any work, you know. I just wanted to kind of provide that context because I didn't think it was being adequately provided.
So further to that, what kind of date would you, or what kind of timeline are you looking at putting a shovel in the ground in completion?
Again, we because obviously it's summer now, and now's the perfect construction weather, we have to get something, or at least be able to start digging in the ground in the next month or 6 weeks. If we can't do that, then we're going to be looking at working on this project in the winter. So that's why we're here today. We're seeing if there's some way we can start or partially start, or maybe we'll get into that. And sorry, I just want to make a comment on the planning department here saying that these homes are barrack style. And it's almost insulting because we put a lot of energy and a lot of time in designing these units. You know, you're talking to a guy that's built over 1,000 semi-units, and that's what these units pretty much look like. If we were, you know, originally when we looked at this project, we looked at doing things with like a barrack style, but I didn't want to have that in my community because we could have also proposed just a big long building or a big huge building there that might look like the projects down the road. But no, we decided to spend the extra money and invest the extra money and time, and it'll even cost more to build these structures, but they're all going to look like semis coming down the street. So when somebody says that they're barrack style, they're not barrack style. You drive down the street, I don't know if we have pictures of these, you'll see these, they'll look like semis.
So again, I just kind of take a little offense to somebody calling these barracks out, because there's not, and I put a lot of energy into trying to make this subdivision, or not, it's not a subdivision, trying to make this rental complex look like a lot of semis, like, you know, there's a lot of developments around our community like that.
Okay. Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. I have a few questions if I can. Madeline or Danielle, Matt or Mr. Baird had indicated that you've already looked at site plan. If you have that before you, how far along are you in your site plan controls? And I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. Is it going to require sprinkler systems? Are there hydrants in this location? I mean, you would have had to have gone before the fire chief to get that information. And more importantly, understanding the developer wants to get this thing started and get it going. I mean, when you talked about wanting to put the shovel in the ground, they've had it sitting outside the entrance to the lot for the last month and a half, so it's ready. But what hurdles, what large hurdles can you see? I mean, understanding that this process is new for us as well. Can you see that they're going to have to get over? What major hurdles are they going to be facing in the next very short period of time that we can help them with? So twofold question, thank you.
Sure, I'll address the fire. So we have had preliminary site plans brought to us and we have been discussing them. The fire hydrants are proposed. Whether or not there's sprinklers in the building, that I can't comment on. I'm not sure the building department makes those comments, but definitely there's fire hydrant proposed.
With respect to the hurdles, we don't see any hurdles. It would just proceed through the normal process of finalizing those sanitary plans with engineering, finalizing the stormwater management with engineering and IRCA. In this case, the consultation with the county is very important. It's a county road. They will require land use and building permits. And so that's one that I think that needs to be completed and finalized right away so that we know what type of road are we looking at, what type of facilities are on there, and how does that impact the rest of the site. But otherwise, I think it's just proceeding through the normal process to finalize all those plans that Mr. Baird's mentioned, and we've started the review on all of those, so.
Well, thank you, Danielle, because you've helped me with some projects in the past. I'm thinking about 77 Highway, where you said you need to go to the county first and get some information there before you go any further. So those are the kind of roadblocks that I'm thinking about, that maybe we can prioritize them for them and say, listen, get this one done right away so we can move to the next and to the next. So, and you may have those already.
Councillor Verbeke.
Mr. Mayor, thanks. I'm kind of impressed with this development and as far advanced as it is. I won't even talk about the county bike lanes right now. I will talk about, is there anywhere in there you could put a park? 100 by 100, something? I mean, looking at it, so that might alleviate some of the other pressures of, playground area or something, yeah, or picnic shelter. I don't know that, but I'm impressed the way it's going so far, and hopefully you can do something soon.
There is an area behind, I think it's block 10 to 14, I don't know if you have that information, where there's a pretty big open area, and that's the area we were looking at putting, make it like a soccer field and maybe put a basketball and things like that there. So we are looking at putting some kind of facilities over there for the public that's going to be renting there.
Councillor.
Where the mayor thinks, and a follow-up, I know, Matt, do you have any drawings or anything was submitted, what it may look like, or I know maybe we'll have to come and review it then with
What a park
staff.
would look like?
No, the building itself.
Oh, yeah, those have been submitted.
Okay, it would have been nice to have them in here also, thanks.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Worship. At what point do we get the public's input on this? I think to Paroli's developments, Talbot Street East, there was a lot of input that came from our neighboring community, and I would assume this will be no different. So when would that process happen?
There's actually no changes being made to the zoning bylaw at all, and this is going through site plan in which there is no public consultation process. The only element in which the public would be notified of the development is the removal of the H symbol. I noted before, either we have a choice, we can put it in the paper, or we could circulate it to those within the vicinity of the development, or we could do both. It's kind of sort of open in the air as far as the Planning Act goes, but there is no formal public consultation process.
But you say there would be some sort of meeting here that night when the proposal to remove the holding would happen. That would be a chance for some delegates to get up in front of us regarding that.
So the standard process for the removal of an H would include staff bringing forward a report to advise that the conditions have been met. And so typically the conditions are that you enter into an agreement that say we're satisfied servicing and the development can proceed efficiently. And so with that, it would be a staff report. Someone would have to be aware that it was being presented to council. Typically, we would put it in the paper a week or two before, as long as we know when it's going, and send a notice of the same to the residents. But they would have to register as a delegation. It's not a public meeting for consideration. It would just be a recommendation to approve the bylaw.
And that's where this differs, this process that we're doing tonight. If this was a subdivision plan, we would be getting public input at that point, correct? Versus the way we're doing it here.
Yes, plan of subdivision does include public consultation.
Mr. Neufeld?
Oh, I was going to lead Councillor Wilkinson to that, but he got there on his own, so.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I was just going to say, you understand that we have a sense of wanting to get some affordable housing in place, what with the boarding house bylaw and the fact that we know that there's a shortage of that type of housing. Nice housing, to me, this is a step in the right direction. So I think you understand why we're hoping to see this through. And we understand the problem with the lack of the servicing of the sewer line yet. But I'm certainly hoping that engineering can see this through fairly quickly with the approval of that sanitary system, because it will solve the problem, solve a portion of the problem for the municipality as well as for industries like Highline. And you know, I've been out at their family picnic, and those people love being here. They love working for Highline. They're a great employer, and for them to add more to that quality of life to a lot of these people that are newcomers is a really good thing. They're not slamming a bunch of people into tiny spaces. They do things right. So to me, for us to see this project through quickly, I certainly hope, I mean, still following the things we need to follow, but giving it a sense of urgency, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Along with the Deputy Mayor had just said, I think that this type of a project is really needed within our municipality, simply because it would alleviate some of the problems that we've been experiencing with the overpopulating of our current residential areas with this type of housing. And this is a well-needed project, I believe. And I would really hope that the administration, as well as with the developer and as well as with the architect people, can get together on this. I know that in the past we've had some issues where required plans are not being submitted in their entirety or at the requirements that the municipality is asking for. So I hope there's a real coordinated effort here between Mr. Baird, if you're the designer on this, that completed diagrams and requests are done rather than keep flopping back and forth, or that the municipality has to make those, I guess, corrections or whatever. Again, going back and going along with what the Deputy Mayor is saying here, is the fact that this project is currently, I think, of a necessity within our community, and I would like to see it as well move along as quickly as possible, and that both parties can, you know, get together and get this thing straightened out to us. The other question I have is, because of this, are you going to be installing all your own, I guess, what we're going at, it's not a new subdivision, but it's I guess, a development in its entirety on its own. So you'll be putting in all the infrastructure and all the requirements that are required for this, correct?
Yes, we'll be putting in all the sewers, the street lights. I guess if you kind of look at it from the top, it'll look like a subdivision, and that was our whole intent. And that's why I'm a little frustrated. I keep going back to this barrack style thing, because it really upsets me, because, you know, these units they're for lower income, but they're still upper scale. Like, they're not just like a bunch of shacks put together. So again, if you do look at it, if you're flying over it, it'll look like a subdivision when you're driving by, but it'll all be one company will own everything all together.
if I may, Your Worship. I'm quite familiar with some of the construction that you're doing, and I can appreciate the fact, and where you're coming from, Madeline and Danielle are saying that you're not rubber stamping something across here, that it's a door and 5-bedroom type thing, and then you're gone. I can appreciate the fact, because it's in an area that you have developed yourself previously anyway. So I'm sure you don't want to downgrade the aesthetics of that community by anything other than making it quite appealing to the public.
That's why we went with something that looks like semis, and they all got different roof lines, so they all will look a little different. And, at the end of the day, they're rental units, so we got to make sure that the structure, is built for renters. But again, there's different things that we do. We change the out fronts with different colors, again, different roof lines, things like that there, so it all doesn't look all the same. And it's the same thing we do when I do a development with semis. I've done, developments where I've done, 50 semis on a street, and they're pretty much all the same, but you change just different things, sometimes windows, especially roof lines, colors, things like that, that makes things look a little different all the way down the subdivision, and I've done lots of those.
And going along again with the Deputy Mayor's comments, I hate stealing all your comments tonight, but anyway, like this Talbot Street one that we had put in, along the same lines, we had some controversy, but it seemed to work well, and I'm sure that this particular project will work well as well. And again, going back, not to to labor on it, but it's needed, and it's needed urgently, I think, within the community to alleviate some of the problems this council is facing with housing. Thank you.
Okay, my turn. Mr. Leovis, I don't think Madeline really said that they're going to be barrack style. Actually, I heard her very hesitant to use the word, and I don't think she was implying that they were going to look ugly. Just from a planning perspective, they're saying, we're hoping that there are going to be different variances, and now you've just confirmed that there are. So don't be offended by that. I understood. Yep, understood. When we originally talked about this, and I knew Highline was involved in it, and I understand all of our agriculture industry is looking for housing. I couldn't think of a better solution than what's been produced here. And as often as the municipality gets blamed for holding up developments, more times than not, it's because reports are missing from the other side. And so while planning was saying this is all missing, and now Matt has come back and said, well, we've got all this, I was really happy to hear that. I don't know if it's in your hands yet, but if it's done, it's on its way. So I'm hoping that we can get this through as quickly as possible so that we can help you get that shovel in the ground. If we dig a little deeper on this, though, because Highline mushrooms are involved, obviously you're building quarters for our international workers. Really is what this, if not all of it, the majority of it is going to be used for. I'm sorry? It's not just, okay, I need you to turn your mic on so the people at home can hear us when.
Sorry, yeah, it's not all for Highlands, but a good portion is, but it is open to the public too.
Okay, so this is where I was kind of getting lost in some of the discussions with everybody around the table, because we're talking about families and parks and all this kind of stuff. And in my mind, I'm seeing this as really, I'm not even going to use terminology, housing for our international workers. And I don't know that any of our international workers, and I could be wrong, are necessarily here as families. So I didn't see the importance of the safety issues of sidewalks or the park and all that kind of stuff, because if it's going to be used for this, then that's not, in my mind, logically not necessary. But then I think further out that maybe once, if we're lucky enough to get the funding that we're hoping for to resolve the housing issue in the agricultural area, then those units might become available to the families that are looking for the more affordable housing, which then brings me back to the question of planning. If that is to happen, like if we took the broader view, not where we are right now, because you're building in the parking spots and a bunch of bike spots, and bikes are cool, but if we end up with families in there for more affordable housing, they may have one vehicle. Are there enough parking spots with the way it's laid out right now?
Thank you. And I just want to, before I answer your question, I just want to note, so for planning practice, we cannot plan for a particular type of user. We have to plan for all. So that's why we make the general comments. For parking, it meets all of our parking requirements.
Good.
So what they have supplied is exactly what they would need through our zoning bylaw.
Perfect. Okay. If per se, we're looking at 84 units, right, in total? 14 buildings.
14 buildings, 84 units.
84 units, 3 bedrooms in each.
Correct.
And if we're putting international workers in there, are there 2 per bedroom?
Correct, 2 per bedroom.
So 6 people per, so if we filled it, we're looking at over 500 people living in a rather condensed area.
I don't know if I'd call it a rather condensed area, but yeah, you know what I mean?
In my mind, I
well,
have acres around me, so yeah, you know.
yeah, in a medium density area.
Considered medium, okay.
I think that's what it's.
All right. I'm just trying to look at all the different avenues that I have to justify.
Yeah.
I think the location is awesome. And in hearing your description tonight of how you're going to alter the appearance of the buildings, I think that's great as well. So conceptually, I think this is wonderful. I feel a lot more secure when planning has the information that they need to say to council, to say, yes, let's go ahead with it. And that's where I'm still sitting tonight. I know you want to get going. I know you have to get going. But until we have, I think, as much as we have needs in place, I'm going to be waiting for my planning department to say, now's the time to say yes. So, but I think, as Mr. Neufeld started this off, this was just for us to consider as a concept, and are we willing to take a much deeper look at this kind of a layout? So that's where I think we are supposed to be tonight. Councillor?
Well, I know we're the mayor, but that's basically what the recommendation is, right? So I would move the recommendation based on what I've heard tonight, and then let administration and the developers
work it out,
go their merry way. Yeah, no, but like to work it out and hash it out, and hopefully, you know, I know there's a major backlog of homes and buildings being built, so we can't put that on the staff. But I mean, I just try to get it done as soon as possible.
I have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Hammond. Mr. Neufeld.
Well, on that note, administration is willing to and wanting to work with this group and get them rolling. It wasn't a unique concept, so that's why we thought we needed to bring it here. Yes, a lot of the reports have been submitted. Not all of them have been reviewed yet, and obviously we're still waiting for other agencies. But to a department, we've been talking about this. We want to see this go too. There's no reason for administration to ever want to hold up a development, right? So we want to see this go, and we will work with Jim and Matt to make sure that we get this through as quickly as possible.
Okay. So a motion on the floor. Further discussion, Councillor Jacobs.
Oh, if I may, Your Worship, I'd just ask Mr. Leovis a question.
Sure.
Are you satisfied with this? I know that we've had some discussion prior to this as well. You say you're under a very strict timeline. Is this going to work in so that it doesn't delay or
I guess this,
jeopardize the whole project?
and again, I want council to know that, planning is work. I don't want them to think that, oh, they're not working. No, they are working with us. I talked with Danielle today, so I don't want to put the wrong impression there. It's just that there's an urgency here for us. This is a pretty good-sized project. And we really need to start doing some preparations or start doing something in the field. Now, I guess legally I'm allowed to get in there and start, maybe to dig a hole or whatever for things, but I really don't want to do that and start, insulting this council by, just jumping in and starting something ahead of time. So that's why I was trying to see if there's some way we can actually, like, there's a lot of these items here that I'm pretty sure we could get fixed up pretty fast. If there was some way we could start doing something on site, even where I could show Highland too that we are progressing, and we're doing something. So I don't know if there's some way we can, again, do something on that site, under our own risk and
Yeah.
things like that there.
I think we did this with another large development town not too long ago, so Mr. Neufeld?
Yes, and provided that there aren't some applicable laws that need to be satisfied in the first place. Our chief building official, he has that discretion, that concern. We can't be doing something that is, will be viewed as illegal. So again, we will do the best that we can to move this forward. But for example, if IRCA permit has not been received, then we can't give a building permit, right? So those are the sorts of things that administration is taking into consideration. If there are things where we can say, now that we've got the applicable law taken care of, and we're in a position to give, for example, a partial building permit to a certain extent, we will do that. We will consider when and if we can do that. But right now, we're not in a position to even be able to do that because there are some applicable law issues that need to be dealt with.
And I guess that's where I was going with you, Mr. Lewis. So you would be able to work with them, and then possibly, as Mr. Neufeld says, we're going to...
So if we get some, like, for example, IRCA permit and which we're waiting for, from what I understand, and some response back from the county, if we get these kind of issues resolved, then you're saying, would we have to come back to council to ask for a partial permit to start, or would we just talk with building, or how would... At what point can I ask for that, basically? That's what I'm going to get asked when I have my meeting tomorrow. They're going to say, when can you start? And I'd really like to be able to say, I got to do this, and this.
And then, yeah.
And I can maybe, start something.
I'll let Mr. Neufeld answer that.
I don't think it will be a matter of you asking for it. We know that you want to do this. So we'll figure out when we can say to you, okay, Jim, just this last thing, and then we can bring it back. Remember too that we still need to give notice to the surrounding residents regarding the removal of the H. So that's still another council meeting. But let's see what we can accomplish in the meantime. I don't think that you need to say, okay, now I want my partial permit. We know that will help expedite things. We'll figure out when is the best time and when we've satisfied what we need to satisfy.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the recommendation then? The motion carries. Thank you. There are matters for approval. We have the minutes of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee held March 27th, moved by Councillor Verbicki, support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on those minutes. All in favor? And carried. And other matters for consideration, we have the municipality's call, not the province, for the right to approve landfill developments. I'm assuming all of you had a chance to read this. It was raised to me, I can't remember which mayor it was, but he was here in Leamington with the Southwestern Ontario Tourism Association, and he has proposed, and several other communities in Ontario are proposing, and even the county, I brought it to the county council, which are now proposing that we recommend to the provincial government that municipalities be giving more authority to say yes or no. Because right now, if somebody wants to come in and put a dump in your backyard, they more or less can. So, and that's what's happening up in some of these municipalities. So that's what this motion is all about. And I'm just hoping council will, it's really, we're just supporting the recommendations of other municipalities. Moved by Councillor Hammond and support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Report on closed session. Ruth, do you want to do that, or? No?
Closed meeting was held at 5:15 prior to the open session of council pursuant to subsection 239(2)E and B of the Municipal Act 2001 for the purpose of considering two items, confidential report LLS 3418 dated May 29th, 2018, regarding Board of Negotiation meeting expropriation of lands 323 Erie Street South. Council provided direction to administration on this matter. And confidential report LLS 3718 dated June 7th, 2018 regarding salary review job evaluations for identifiable individuals. No direction was provided on this matter. Proper notice of the meeting was given and the meeting adjourned at 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. And then consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 3718 being a bylaw to appoint commissioners and establish annual fees for the better maintenance of various municipal drainage schemes throughout the municipality of Leamington. Bylaw 3818 being a bylaw to authorize the municipality of Leamington to enter into a municipal funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario on the Main Street Revitalization Initiative Grant Program. And bylaw 4118 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held June 11th, 2018, be read a first, second, and third and final time.
Moved by Councillor Berbicki, supported by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Notices of motion, none were circulated, so open session. Councillor Wilkinson?
Just want to make a comment about something that surprised me lately, is all the positive remarks that we're getting about our four-way stop at Cherry and Seacliff. I'm shocked by that. It's turned into almost a daily thing now where I'm getting good comments. There's still a few that don't like it, but I'm just surprised by the amount of positive comments I've been getting. And I like it too. I'm there every day trying to go northbound off of Cherry, which was a struggle, especially on weekends. I'm finding now we all take our turn and we're making it work. So I like it too, but there's been numerous comments saying they do like it. At the same time, there's a few that don't. I realize that, but I thought I'd pass that on.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. I just maybe address this to Rob. I've had, and I brought up earlier, but we have some issues with the pickup of refuse in the Sturgeon Meadows area. I drove by the other day, and there's 2 or 3 places there. Now, I don't know if we're not picking those particular items up or not, but maybe if someone could go around there and assess that, it would be much appreciated. I know there's some calls that made in City Works, but I haven't heard too much back on that. So if it wouldn't be too much problem, if you could do that, please, I appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should have asked you ahead of time, Rob, but I just wondered, because I've been asked twice today, are we getting hanging baskets uptown, or are we just going to have the, the urns or whatever they are, the planters?
Through your worship, I fully expect the hanging baskets. I think it's just a matter of talking to Public Works to get council a timeline. So I'll do that. I'll talk to Public Works and let council know when we expect them to arrive.
Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. I was pleased to be able to represent council at the 75th anniversary of the Branch 324 Wheatley Legion on Saturday. It was kind of a short and sweet event, but very nicely and well attended. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you. Nothing else? Cool. Statement, I'm saving mine for statements non-debatable. Yeah, so. Okay, so mine's really quick, and it's actually kind of a pleasure too, because Councillor Hammond has been an acquaintance and friend of mine for a very, very long time. And when I'm at events, I freewheel a lot of my speeches, so I'm not necessarily paying attention to everything that I'm saying, but I think I am. So most recently, the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Neufeld, and Councillor Hammond were with me in attendance at Point Pelee National Park. And I got up there and I looked right at them and gave them the recognition of being there with me. And I still called Councillor Hammond Councillor Jacobs, which I've done here on several occasions and a couple other occasions as well. And I know it's upsetting, and I apologize to you in person already, but I just want to do this formally. It is not intentional. I don't know. You're the only one I get wrong, and I've known you the longest of everybody. It's crazy. So, and that's why I brought it up under non-debatable, because now you can't say anything back to me. Anyway, so, and apologize to Judy for me too. Next time I see her, I'll do the same. And I will do my best to get your name right, Councillor Hammond. Motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, non-debatable, yep. Councillor?
Just should remind everybody too, we got the Leamington Fair going on this weekend, along with the sheepdogs coming to town. Fantastic weekend around Leamington. I hope everybody can make it out.
Motion to adjourn? Councillor Jacobs? I was going to say Councillor Hammond, but... Deputy Mayor? All in favor? And carried.